I'd like a show of hands of all of you who are single that plan on getting married. Okay, a few of you, down the road, yes, I'm going to get married. Now there may be some of you that are thinking, nah, I'm not going to do that. Don't plan on that. But let me ask you this question and think this through. Give me a show of hands. How many of you that aren't married plan on getting married and then plan on getting a divorce? Nobody? I mean, nobody's saying, I'll get married, 10 years down the road, couple kids, it's not going to work out, we'll just move on, get into another marriage. Now, we don't plan on getting a divorce. And yet the Gottman Institute says that they study marriages, and over a 40-year span of time, so if you start in 1978, take it to 2018, it's 40 years. People that got married in 1978, 60% of those marriages no longer exist. So if you don't plan on getting divorced, why are you going to be different? What's going to be different for you? At beforeisayIdo.org, we want to give you the plan, the direction, the pathway to show you what it takes to not only get married, but to stay married. God created you physical. You are beautiful. God created you to feel very, very deeply. God created you to be smart. A lot of you say, I'm not smart. Yes, you are. You have the power to choose, to change your life, to decide where you go. And God also created you to be incredibly spiritual. And sometimes we have problems with our physical self, our emotional self, we don't feel very smart today. I feel like I'm confused. I don't know where I'm going. God made us spiritual. So when we connect with God, when we connect with Jesus, we have that intimate relationship with Him. We can turn all those things over to Him, and He will help us through all of them. You look at the disciples, they're in the boat, and the boat's going down, the waves are huge, and they're fighting like crazy to keep that boat up, and finally, at the very last resort, they run to the back of the boat, and they, Lord, save us, and what's He doing? He's sleeping. Why is He asleep? Because He's lazy, He doesn't care? No, He knows the outcome. He knows absolutely this boat's not going down. We're going to be okay. When you connect with Jesus, you can know that your boat's going to be okay. So again, with beforeisayIdo.org, we want to help you create that pathway along with Jesus to have not just a marriage for a long time, but a great marriage for a long, long time. So why you are so sexy. And you may say, I'm not sexy. Oh, yes, you are. You are amazingly sexy. God created you to be sexy. Now, I have these chairs out here. I've got mom, I have dad. We've got boy, we have girl over here. And, how in the world do we produce these kids? Now, mom didn't go to Amazon and get free shipping. Well, maybe she went to she really wants a kid, so maybe she goes to Amazon, Victoria's Secret, to buy something to entice dad to have this kid. But the track record of us men, we typically don't need a whole lot of enticement to make this happen. However, having said that, go a little deeper with this. 99%, or maybe higher than that, of all people born were born because of a man's will. Most females cannot force men to have sex with them. It's up to us whether someone's born or not. That's a huge responsibility. So for you young men out there, when you think about the future, and you have the power to create another human being, sexuality is probably one of the most holy things we're ever involved in, because of the fact that we can actually be part of the process of creating another human. That's amazing. And because men, you are responsible for this. You have to take that responsibility very, very seriously. To treat mom correctly, to treat the kids correctly. So let's just say, I know your kids don't want to think about this, but mom and dad do have sex. And God made sex not only to connect us, and we look for connection, but He also made sex so that it's pleasurable. And you think, okay, well, how can you say that? Well, you can be very specific here. A man's penis has 4,000 nerve endings. Sounds like a lot. Works. We like sex. But we move over here to the female, to mom. And a female's clitoris has 8,000 nerve endings. A while back, I got a big amen on that one. The other thing about a woman's clitoris is it has no other reason to be on her body. It doesn't do anything else. But God created it specifically for her to enjoy sex. So you can't say God didn't create this, because He did. He created it to be amazingly good, holy, connect us, and to be very pleasurable all at the same time. So let's just say mom and dad do their thing, and along comes a boy. And I'm going to stay over on this side because I am a boy. So I have a beard, so you don't confuse me with that over there. But they have a boy, and when they have this son, when he's tiny and he's little, they have to take care of him completely. I mean, 2-month-old, got to take care of it. 2-year-old starts to slide out a little bit, starts to walk, starts to talk, thinks they can do things on their own. 4-year-old, 10-year-old. Now when we get to that age, 10 to 12, females start maybe to have a period. Things are changing. Things are different. And then by the time this guy's 13, same with the female, all of a sudden the hormones are kicking in a big, big way, flooding their brain. And typically, and I hate to say this, but mom and dad and other adults kind of look over there and go, oh my goodness. That kid's just full of hormones, and he's going to be crazy until about 21, 22, and then he'll come back to us. And that's about the extent of what's said. It's kind of like handing that kid a car without a steering wheel. And then we wonder why they wreck and run into things and have problems. What I'm going to talk about today is I am going to give you kids a steering wheel. I'm going to talk about sex, how it works in our brain, what goes on with us, so that you can decide, am I going to do this? Am I not going to do this? Why am I doing this? Instead of, I have no idea what I'm doing, so it feels good and away I go. You get to choose what you do. Freedom to choose. We have stimulus here. It can be a lot of things. Women like to shop. They see a pair of shoes. Wow, is the response to buy? Well, right in here is a gap. And you go, whoa, I don't know. Maybe I can't afford this. So we all have this going on. For you young people, say young men, you grab your phone, and there's that Instagram model that's wearing nothing but a little sand and a swimming suit that would cover 3 square inches. That's the stimulus. What are you going to do? What are you going to do here? The response might be masturbation. Might be, I'm just going to really enjoy this. I'm going to keep enjoying this. There's consequences to that. We all have this gap, this place where we have the freedom to choose where we go, whether we look at pornography, or maybe we don't look at pornography, maybe we just have a really good imagination. We can imagine all kinds of things. We have the freedom. My job today is to give you the information. When you look in that gap, and you go, okay, I know this, therefore I'm going to do this, which means you can say no to something when you have a much deeper yes down inside of you. Because I'm going there, I want to get to that point, therefore this is not going to happen right here, right now in my life. So why do we fail if we have the power to choose? Why in the world do we fail? We all mess up. Well, let's go back to our kids here. Just go back to this guy when he's 2. Well, when he's first born, the parents take care of him completely. Do everything for him. Feed him, bathe him, you name it, they do it. And you know what? He's pretty happy with that. The world revolves around me. Now, we get to 2 years old, and we call them the terrible twos, right? Because those kids are just angry, upset, not happy. Well, the reason is, around 18 to 24 months, they all of a sudden, one day, start to have a little bit of self-awareness. And they realize mom and dad actually have a life. And they actually do other things that involve not them. And they're not happy about it. Because a 2-year-old wants what they want, and they want it now. Right now. And how in the world could you leave me out of this? I want that, what's up on the counter, I want it now. I'm going to scream and holler till you get it for me. What I'm going to tell you, though, is all of us, what we learn to be, is just a little bit more sophisticated 2-year-olds. Because all of us want what we want, and we want it now. Right now. And when we have that attitude, we don't give grace. We don't give ourselves grace. We don't give other people grace. We plow ahead getting my way. We fail. Things don't work out so well for us. And they especially don't work out in relationships. Relationships require us to serve, to give, not to take all the time. Now we have appetites. All of us have appetites. Some of you are probably foodies and you love different restaurants. My wife is one of those people. We will drive miles for food. And I'm okay with that. I spend time with her. For me, if I'm in a hotel somewhere and the restaurant's actually all the way across the street, I may not go because that's just too far away. I'm not a foodie, but I have to eat. I have to eat to stay alive. We have to sleep. It's an appetite. And some of us like to sleep less than others, but at some point we have to do it. We have to drink water. And that's something we got to drink a lot of, and it doesn't take very long. And we're going to die if we don't drink water. It's an appetite. Sex is an appetite. However, if you don't eat, you die. If you don't sleep, you die. If you don't drink water, you die. You can go your entire life and not have sex. So why is it such a powerful appetite? Well, we can go our entire lives without sex, but the human race cannot. It's not going very far if people are not having sex. God built that into us so that we would produce more and more human beings. What is sex? Sexual activity is any intimate contact that involves arousal, stimulation, and or a response. It is any intentional sexual intimate behavior between two partners or even one person if self-stimulation is used. Your brain and romance. I was a freshman in high school, and I went to a boarding school, which is different than what most people go to. And at a boarding school, and especially back in those days, we were stuck on campus. We didn't leave at night. We couldn't leave on weekends. We were there all the time. So it made for some interesting relationships because you could eat breakfast, lunch, and supper with your girlfriend. You saw them all the time. And I was a freshman, and one day it was right about recreation time, and I didn't have a game, loved intramurals, playing sports. I didn't play that night, so I was up in my room a little longer than normal. I came down out of the dorm, down around the corner, and I'm headed down to the field, and a young lady stops me. Talked for a few minutes, and she says to me, "Would you like to go with me next Sunday night to a banquet that we're having here?" Like prom kind of thing. We call them banquets. I was blown away. I was a freshman. She was older than I was. But, oh, sure. Yeah, I can do that. But I was rather shocked, to be quite honest with you. Well, because it's a boarding school and we were there all the time, we started hanging out that week. Started having meals together. By the time we get to Friday, we say, you know what? Let's just hang out for the weekend. You know, we're enjoying each other's company. So we get to Friday night, and very strict school, total hands-off policy. Of course, we tried not to follow that as much as we could, but we're sitting there and, being the young, aggressive male that I thought that I was, I reach over and grab her hand, and she pulls her hand away and says, "No, I don't do that." I'm like, "Oh, okay, I respect that, not a problem." But we go through Friday night, we go through all day Sabbath, and somewhere in this time frame, we actually do start holding hands. We get to Sunday night, we go through the whole banquet. We come back. Again, I'm a freshman. I don't know some of the rules. I don't know some of the stuff that goes on. And all of a sudden, they allowed us to take our girls all the way to the girls' dorm, which we were never allowed to do. So we're allowed to do that. We get there. I don't know this, but I guess it was some sort of unwritten rule that the faculty wouldn't be there for a while, kind of off somewhere else. So as I walk up there, there's my brother, making out with his girlfriend like crazy. And I turn to my date and I make some smart aleck remark about my stupid brother. And she looks at me and she says, "Are you going to follow his example?" Oh my, I froze. And I thought, wow, here's my chance. And so I just jump in. I don't remember it, to be quite honest with you, until bam! I've got a hand on my shoulder and I look up. It's a faculty member. And he's smiling. He says, "Troy, I think you need to say goodnight." I said, "Yes, I do." I said goodnight and I headed back to the dorm. Now, all of a sudden, I'm a very different person. I go up in the dorm and my buddies are up there. I'm like, "Guys, did you make out with your girl?" "I did. It's amazing. What's wrong with you?" "You didn't?" As if I'd planned to do any of this. I hadn't. I had all this bravado. I thought it was the coolest thing ever. I mean, I was just going nuts. What I didn't realize, that I've got hormones in my brain, things that are happening. There are three main hormones we're going to talk about. The first one, oxytocin, primarily for women. And it's a very strong bonding hormone. And if a woman holds a man's hand or hugs him for longer than 20 seconds, she starts to bond with him. And so this young lady, as we go through the weekend, she's holding my hand. We're sitting close. Oxytocin starts to kick in, and she starts to feel comfortable with me. She starts to feel safe with me. I'm a guy. I'm oblivious to all this stuff, right? And then vasopressin for men, and it's not near as strong. It does help us bond with our wives. It helps us bond with our children, but it's not nearly as powerful. But then during sexual activity, dopamine floods our brain. Floods the brain during sex, rewards risky behavior associated with addictive behaviors. Dopamine's why people jump out of perfectly good airplanes. Feels good. It's amazing. Wow, I want to do that again. I go up in the dorm and my head's full of dopamine and I think I'm the coolest guy on the planet. Had no clue. Didn't know. But for you girls, this guy wants to get physical. Do I really want to start bonding with this guy? I know it's just holding hands, but do I really want to start that process? Is that important to me? Oxytocin also floods a woman's brain when she breastfeeds. And that's why we always know a woman and her kid, you don't get between. A woman and her kid, she's going to come up fighting because she is bonded with her child in a big, big way. So we have these things going on in our head. And for us guys, for women as well, are we just chasing the wow, that feels good? Or are we stopping and going, okay, there's something a whole lot more important here. If you were listening closely to what I said before, when she said to me, "Are you going to follow his example?" I didn't say, "Well, what do you think? Will this be good for our relationship? Is this something you and I want to be involved in? Maybe we ought to think about this." I didn't say that at all. What I said was, here is my chance. I deserve this. I want this for me. It was very, very selfish. Not a good way to go at all. So think about why you're headed where you're headed, why you're doing what you're doing, and understand these hormones have a very, very powerful effect on you. So why you are so sexy? Well, it starts in your brain. And again, in our brain, why are we attracted to who we're attracted to? I mean, it's kind of hard to know. When I was 22 years old, and I spent a week in Puerto Rico. And after a week in Puerto Rico, I said, these Puerto Rican women are the most beautiful women I've ever seen in all my life. I'm going to marry a Puerto Rican. So because that was such a goal of mine, I went to Union College in Lincoln, Nebraska, where I was sure there was going to be hundreds of Puerto Ricans. Well, I don't know how many were there, but I do know this, there was one. She jumped off the page at me, and I married her. And the amazing thing in the brain is 31 years later, she is the most beautiful woman in the world. There's no one that comes even remotely close to second place. She is the most beautiful woman in the world. I am absolutely attracted to her. I'm addicted to her. And I say that to her and she just kind of rolls her eyes. But it's true, and I'm going to show in the brain why that happens to us. Why we are so profoundly sexual. Inside our brain are neurons. These things right here, and it's kind of like a little computer in your head. You know, if this computer over here is quite a good machine, but if it's not connected to the internet, you can't do a whole lot. Well, I mean, you can, but you can do a whole lot more once you connect to the internet. So these neurons are pretty amazing by themselves, but they have these, they have these synapses right here that connect neurons together. They're not hardwired together. What it is in here, the synapse, actually those neurochemicals that I was talking about, are what provide the connection. And so we have all these connections in our brain. By the time you're 20 years old, you have 10 billion neurons, and you have 100 trillion connections in your brain. It's an amazing place. You could say that your brain is your largest sex organ because of all the things that happen there. And the stuff that you do, activities you're involved in, change your brain. For example, my wife and I a few years ago sat on the third row at the Dallas Philharmonic. And we're sitting there 3 rows away from world-class violinists. And it was amazing. The music was just beautiful. But if you were to look at a violinist's brain, and you were to look where her left hand or his left hand is up on that violin, and he's practicing 4, 6, 8, 10 hours a day for years, and you look where his brain lights up or her brain lights up, it's going to be way bigger than it is going to be for mine, because I don't play the violin. So they're changing their brain. So our activities change our brain. And we can do it in a good way, we can do it in a bad way. Now let's talk about sex before marriage. 1 in 4 sexually active teenagers have an STD. I don't know about you, but if I have a 1 in 4 chance of having a car accident, I don't want to go. I'm not ready to drive down that road if that's going to happen. Teenage girls who are involved in premarital sex are 3 times more likely to get depressed. Okay, didn't surprise me a ton. They're also 3 times more likely to attempt suicide. Well, why is that? Girl falls in love with a guy or thinks she does. She has sex with him. He breaks up with her. She's heartbroken. And, she decides she's going to attempt suicide. The other thing that's interesting about heartbreak, if you look at the brain, during heartbreak, the brain lights up in the exact same place as if you broke a bone. It hurts. It's painful. But a teenage girl that has premarital sex, 3 times more likely to attempt suicide. Teenage boys who have premarital sex are 7 times more likely to attempt suicide. Boys? Really? Why is that? Why in the world would a boy be attempting suicide when so often as his friends are out there going, hey, way to go? And his dad may even be saying, son, way to go. But as men, at the very heart of us, what we want more than anything else is respect. And that starts with self-respect. And when we know intuitively, respect means service, it means protection, it means taking care of someone. And if we go out and just randomly have sex to take something from somebody else, we may not really realize it, but we're tearing down our self-esteem. We may not have anybody to talk to about it. And so we resort to attempting suicide 7 times more likely to attempt suicide those who are having premarital sex. So sex and marriage. This is not some random picture. I actually know these 2 people, and this is very much about who they are. They love life. But let's just go through what happens in your brain when you get married. Let's just take this scenario. Let's take 2 young people who are virgins. And people think that doesn't happen anymore. It does. A lot more than you might think. You take 2 kids that are virgins, they get married, they start having sex, and they do a brain scan, and their brain lights up in a certain place because they're having sex. And then the scientists come back, say 12 months, 18 months later, do another brain scan, and their brains light up in a very different place. Because they have created a pathway of neurons and synapses deep into their brain that creates connection, creates oneness. And it's very, very powerful. Now, the thing that happens, the brain doesn't know whether you got married or not if you're having sex with someone. Doesn't realize that. The hardest breakup I ever had was the first person I had sex with. 15 years later, I still don't think I'm over him. I still dream about him and think about him and compare every guy since then to him. I'm married now and I feel like it's a threesome in my heart. He's still here. It's like he's a part of me and I still can't get over him. So let's say you meet someone, girl and guy meet each other at 18, 19, 15, whatever age. And they have a long-term monogamous sexual experience together. They'll create that long-term bond into their head. And then the relationship goes away. And they go off and they marry someone else. Now it's amazing, the brain is adaptable. And you can bond with someone else. But you're not going to get rid of this anytime soon. Now the brain sometimes, if you don't use certain things, it gets rid of them. But this is really, really strong, especially if it's been going on for a long period of time. Now, brain changers. We look at pornography. How does that change my brain? Well, as Celeste said earlier, women are visual, men are visual, or visual in different ways. But typically we look at a man as, bam, we see something visual and we're turned on, we're excited right now. There's strip clubs, there's things like that all over the place. And it was interesting, one day my wife and I are driving through Denver and we drove by a strip club. My wife said, hey, have you ever been to a strip club? And I said, no, but we can put a pole in the bedroom. And we don't have a pole in the bedroom, trust me. It's not there. But we typically, as men, and women can be a lot as well, are very, very visual. And we look and we see porn and everything, well, they're just very visual, that's what it is, but it goes way deeper than that. Again, as I said earlier, men love respect. We just want respect more than anything else. You can walk into a group of young high school kids, and they could be laughing and carrying on, a bunch of young men, and you can stop them on a dime by saying, hey, you want to be a man? You can quiet that room in a heartbeat. Because every one of them wants it. They want that respect. And the crazy thing it is with porn, and probably at our heart, deep, deep inside of us as men, we want a woman, a beautiful woman beside us, who loves us, cares for us, and gives herself to us. So when I look at porn, I'm looking at a lady, man, she's giving herself to me. Feels pretty good. It's fake as fake can be. She's not giving herself to you. She's getting paid. It's ugly. It's poison. But we're fooled into thinking wow, I'm somebody right now because she's giving herself to me. We follow through, we masturbate, all those things, and the shame washes over us. We realize, yeah, fooled myself again. Not good. Not a good thing at all. And then if you have pornography, and we often talk about pornography, masturbation being a male thing, it's very much a female thing. And the sad thing, and that's the beauty of this program, is how often do we hear programs where we sit down, we talk about the females having problems with masturbation. But when I do talks, when I do this talk on college campuses, virtually every time I do, I have young women come up to me and say, yep, I'm addicted to pornography. I'm addicted to masturbation. So what's the big deal with masturbation? Well, we're talking about this brain science. And this is probably the most important thing I'm going to say tonight. Is when we masturbate and we orgasm, our brain is flooded with all the sexual hormones exactly the same way as if I had sex with my wife. The brain's going to respond the same way no matter what. And what scientists say is that when we orgasm, whatever's in front of us, we become extremely attracted to it. And we bond to that person, picture, or even our imagination. Brain doesn't know the difference, but it bonds to that. And if it's the same person over and over and over again, then we create this long-term bond into the brain. But if I'm having sex with my wife, and a couple days later I'm masturbating to porn, and then I'm back to all these different things, scientists will come back 18 months later after you got married, and the brain is not lighting up in a different place because that long-term pathway never happens. And it will never happen until you're monogamous with your wife. So therapists have women lined up out their doors going, I can't connect with my husband. Why can I not connect with my husband? Because he hasn't bonded with her. Or in some extreme, maybe not so extreme, in some cases you will have females who never orgasm. They just, for whatever reason, there's a lot going on there, but if they don't, they're not bonding with their husband. As I said earlier, a man, or us, people, don't have to have sex to live. We can go forever without it. The world, for population's sake, needs sex. But let's look at this marriage. He doesn't have to have sex. She doesn't have to have sex. But if they're going to have a great marriage, they have to have sex. Sex is what bonds that marriage together, what glues it together. And as you know, that violinist is practicing 4 or 5 hours a day, big part in their brain. The more sex, the better. People ask me, well, how often should people have sex? I say, well, every day that ends in Y. Now, there's a lot more to it than that, and I understand that. But it's powerful in your brain. And we change our brain. And we can have this amazing monogamous relationship if we check out the fake porn. If we go that direction, it doesn't even have to be porn. It can be, it can just be an imagination. It's the exact same thing. If we go that route, we prevent that long-term bond from happening. And it profoundly changes our marriage, and we wonder why it doesn't get better. Corinthians 6:18, run from sexual sin. No other sin so clearly affects the body as this one does. For sexual immorality is sin against your own body. Sexual sin changes your brain. It's sin against your own body. So your path to a great marriage and sex life. So some of you are thinking, yeah, I want to get married, but that's not happening for 10 years, 15 years. I don't have to worry about that. Well, I'm going to tell you a couple things you can do right now to prepare for that great marriage down the road. And the first thing is the foundation of a marriage is trust and love, but trust. And so if trust is so important, I don't even know this person, so how am I going to create trust with this person? Well, let's start with ourselves. As you've listened to all these different presentations and the Lord's impressed on your heart that, man, I should do this, I should make this change, maybe I should go there. Can you trust yourself to do that? Are you going to be willing to do that? Matthew 5:3 said, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." What does that mean to be poor in spirit? I will tell you this, the most successful people I know are all poor in spirit. Because what poor in spirit means is, you know what? I'm going to take my pride and I'm going to set it aside. And I'm going to go, yeah, I can learn. I can grow. I understand there's a God all-powerful out there who can help me. I'm going to ask Him to help me. I'm going to ask Him to guide me. And I'm going to keep looking to learn. So if I look at myself and I'm really honest, I'm going to go, I don't know. I really can't trust myself. But when you stop and you say, okay, I don't trust myself, but there is a God in heaven who created me. There is no problem I can have that He can't handle. I can take that problem, I can hand it to Him, and I can start to be a trustworthy person. And the beauty of becoming a trustworthy person, as you start to date later on in life, you start to recognize what a trustworthy person is. If they're not trustworthy, they'll stick out like a sore thumb because you're trustworthy. You know what untrustworthy looks like. If you understand love, the depths of love, then you know what someone who doesn't love looks like. So if you want to prepare for marriage down the road, learn to trust yourself. The second thing I'm going to tell you is to be faithful to your future spouse. I'm going to say, well, how do I do that? Well, there's nothing we want more than fidelity from our spouse. I mean, we want to have a woman who just loves and adores us, and women want a man who just thinks they are the most beautiful person on the planet. And that should happen. In fact, if you look at the story of Cinderella, fairy tale, usually fairy tales are way outlandish and it's way different than real life. In this case, real life is way better than Cinderella. Because in the story of Cinderella, Cinderella gets the guy, only one girl at the ball gets the guy, and the rest of them go home empty. In real life, every woman who marries a man, his brain is made to adore her. Only her. God created it that way. So when you get married at 21 and you think she's really beautiful, and then at 60, for some crazy reason, she's more beautiful now than she ever was. And it's true. Because God created us to be that way. He really did. And for you women, believe us. Men, when we say you're beautiful, it's the devil talking to you when you say, I'm not. Yeah, you are. Absorb it. Enjoy it. Believe it. Learn to trust yourself. Be faithful to your future spouse. So when that time comes, they can believe you. They can trust you. They know you're going to be faithful to them in a very powerful way. You don't need pornography for sex to be good later on. You don't need sexual experience for sex to be better. What you need is this. Jesus said, if you hold to my teaching, then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Let's bow our heads. Father, we thank you so much for today. We thank you that as you look into our lives and we look into our past and we feel shame, that you are a God of grace. That we can put all of that behind us and we can just look forward and we can look to you to be there for us, to be there and handle all the issues that we have in whatever problems that arise. There is no issue too big. There is no one who's done something so bad that you, God, can't heal us. Lord, I pray that you bless and be with every person here today. Guide them, I pray, in your name. Amen. Thank you very much.